My name is Kristie Lu Stout. I'm an anchor correspondent with CNN based here in Hong Kong. And for the last quarter century, I've been working as a reporter, covering Hong Kong, covering Silicon Valley, China, Asia, and the world. And I've been asked to come here today to talk about my journey to journalism, to talk about how I cultivated my voice as a journalist, and also to share some tips, just how you too are able to sort of cultivate your voice, to harness your intrinsic power, and to make an impact when it's time for you to take to the stage and to give a speech. So my journey to journalism started when I was in university. During my undergraduate and graduate studies at Stanford, I hustled. I would write 10 cents a word to any freelance publication that would take me because I wanted to pay off my student loans, and I also wanted to beef up my portfolio. And it was in 1996, that was when I landed an eye-opening internship at Wired magazine in San Francisco. And that really encouraged me to just take on journalism and also new media journalism further. It was after my graduate studies, I decided to go to Beijing, much to the chagrin of every single advisor, parental figure in my life. This was also 1996, 1997. No one knew then just what a story China would become. And I did postgrad studies for a year at Tsinghua University. And while there, I continued to freelance, writing for a variety of publications, including the South China Morning Post. And it was at the South China Morning Post, I had a weekly column called Beijing Byte about the technology industry. And through that, I was able to become an early employee at this internet portal called Sohu.com, which gave me this feeling of being a journalist on embed, being inside what was then the fastest growing sector in the world. And it was a speech that changed my life. In the year 2000, I was here in Hong Kong, and I was invited to give a speech about the nascent internet industry in China at the Foreign Correspondents Club. A senior producer at CNN was in the audience. She booked me as a guest for one of the shows, and the rest is history. So I really am a firm believer that a speech can indeed change your life. And since then, I've been working at CNN for a variety of roles. I started as a multi-platform journalist. I'm now an anchor correspondent at the network, and I've done some of my strongest work, I would like to say, in the last year or so, covering US-China tensions, covering the rise of AI, covering the aftermath of extreme climate events in the region. I've also interviewed a number of newsmakers over the years, including Jane Goodall, Elon Musk, the photographer Annie Leibovitz, Michelle Yeoh, and Anna Wintour. I did manage to convince Anna Wintour to take off her sunglasses for a 30-minute interview. That is not an easy thing to do. That's not something that she regularly agrees to. And the interview aired on CNN, and also, just in case you happen to catch it, a little bit of it was in that documentary that came out a couple years ago called First Monday in May. I also do a number of student outreach programs through the network, outreach programs on topics like gender equality, on women's issues. There's something called My Freedom Day, which goes along with CNN's award-winning initiative called the Freedom Project, which shines a spotlight on modern-day slavery, on human trafficking. And we also have Call to Earth, which is our annual global initiative on engaging with students to encourage them to take that call to action to fight the effects of climate change. They keep me busy at CNN. I also am a host of Marketplace Asia, which is a monthly business program on entrepreneurship, business, innovation here in Asia. And I'm also a host of a program that I really love called Tech for Good. It's now in its 5th season. And this is a program that is about technology being a catalyst for transformative change and how the next generation, how students and student entrepreneurs and innovators are really leading the charge. All the while, I do a lot of speaking. I speak to students around the world, to business people, to women like yourselves. And I've clocked about thousands and thousands of hours over the years speaking to various audiences. But I have to share something with you. I do not intrinsically like public speaking. I am by nature a shy person. I really am. I am something that psychologists call, and not if you've read Quiet by Susan Cain, a extroverted introvert. I'm seeing some nods in the audience. I have learned over time to hack it as a speaker, but by nature, I do not like public speaking. This is me as a kid. I'm 11 years old, I'm in California, I'm going to the beach, and I'm wearing my khakis, my topsiders, and a wool monogram sweater. A normal kid doesn't do that going to the beach. But I did, because I was a good kid, because I did what she was told. I was a passive kid. I was a classic upholder personality. I was not someone who wanted to dare to do something different, to raise her hand in class, or let alone make a speech and hope that it's a speech with impact. But again, I forced myself to. Thanks to the encouragement of teachers, some of my peers, I was able to clock in the hours, taking part in speech and debate in high school, doing student radio when I was at university, forcing myself to say yes each and every time I was invited to give a speech. Say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to challenge myself, because I do believe the more you practice, the more you put yourself out there, the better and stronger you become as a speaker. So this is the moment of the presentation where I get to share with you how you can hack it as a speaker as well. And it all comes down to 3 factors. So number 1, crafting the message. Number 2, delivering the message. And number 3, and this is the critical part, getting over the fear. Okay, so when you craft the message, what do? First of all, there's no such thing as a true impromptu speech. As the great American humorist Mark Twain once said, quote, "It usually takes more than 3 weeks to prepare a good impromptu speech." It takes time, it takes effort. It could be something as quote unquote effortless as a 3-minute toast at a dinner party. You need to put some time and effort into it. And in fact, I am constantly preparing for my next speeches. I keep a number of live Google documents in my Google Drive on various topic areas, whether it's US-China relations or new media trends or technology or giving a public speech. So I can call upon these documents in the event when I'm asked to give a speech. I also use social media this way too. I'm on all the platforms. Yes, I use it to engage with audiences, to amplify our work at CNN, but I also kind of use it as a diary. So when I see an interesting photograph or a URL, an essay, a work of research that's been published, I can share it on social media, and then when that time comes to give a speech, I can go back to one of my social media threads and say, hey, I can use that and I could put that in my speech. And when you craft your message, you've got to know your audience. In fact, this was one of the first questions I asked Oceana and her team. Who is going to be here? Who's taking part? What is the kind of message that they want to hear? And Michelle Obama did this to incredible effect at the Democratic National Convention a few weeks ago in Chicago. When she went up to that stage, there was a roar that no other speaker really received. Well, Kamala, of course, but Michelle Obama generated a reaction that was electric. She gave an incredible speech, and it doesn't matter where you stand on the political spectrum. I think her speech will go down in history as an example of remarkable political oratory. She had that, of course, choice takedown of Donald Trump, but what really got my attention was how she lured the audience in, was how she began her speech. And she started by saying this, quote, "Something wonderfully magical is in the air, isn't it? We're feeling it here in this arena, a familiar feeling that's been buried too deep for far too long. You know what I'm talking about. It is the contagious power of hope." Michelle Obama knew exactly who she was speaking to. She was speaking to an audience inside that stadium in Chicago, across the nation and around the world, who were riding high on this rekindled power, belief in hope. And she wanted to tap into that and harness that, and that's what she did. So every time you're about to make that speech or your presentation, consider this. Who is your audience? I think this is the most important first question to ask. Who is your audience? Who are they? What do they want to hear? And also, when you stand and deliver, you got to give them something that they want. Is there a problem that they want to solve? Is there something that they need to get over a hurdle? You got to frame your speech around them. And when you craft a message, I like to say, consider it a conversation, a polite conversation. And do forgive the typo on the graphic there. It's Maxims plural, not Maxims as in Maxim's Bakery or Maxims of Paris. Sorry about that. There's something called the Maxims of Conversation by the British linguist and philosopher H. Paul Grice, who said if you want to engage in effective, polite conversation, You have to abide by the 4 maxims of conversation, and there are quantity, quality, relevance, and manner. So in terms of quantity, don't overshare, but don't undershare. In terms of quality, be truthful. Keep it fact-based. And if you're going to make a certain charge or allegation, provide the receipts, give some concrete examples to back it up. Relevance. You got to stay relevant. You got to stay on topic. And lastly, manner. Be clear. Don't be obscure. Avoid ambiguity. Because I believe when you give a speech, it's not a one-to-many spew. It's not a one-to-many monologue or a soliloquy. It's actually a form of social conversation. You are giving something to the audience, and the audience is giving something back to you. And you have to be polite and considerate about how you're going to create that connection with your audience by remembering always the 4 maxims of polite conversation, because a speech is always, in my mind, always a polite conversation. And when you deliver the message, you gotta be prepared. It's time to assess the setup. Always ask your colleague or your PR person, whoever, to let you know what kind of situation you're gonna be in. So I didn't have a chance to see this amazing setup before coming here, but Oceana, Andre, and her team were able to send detailed mock-ups of you're gonna be in the middle of the atrium at the landmark. This is what it's gonna look like. This is the backdrop. Don't wear black, because you might look like a disembodied head. You might want to wear a certain color so you're bold and you can stand out, so you can have an idea of what to expect. Always ask the question, what does the room look like before you get there? Also, are you going to be sitting or are you going to be standing at a podium? And if you're going to be sitting, is it going to be a low stool, is it a low couch, or is it going to be a high stool? Everyone here knows it affects your wardrobe choices, and you need to know where you're going to be. And if it's a podium, if you choose it to be a podium, maybe you want to ask access for the podium just to see how high it is, where the microphone is, where you can put your notes. And you can also ask to practice standing at the podium. Or later on, we'll discuss this, when you practice your speech, you could practice your speech at a podium to see your comfort level, to see if that's something that you like. And critically, you got to ask about the microphone situation. I was told today that there was a chance that I might get a lapel mic. So just bringing it back to the conversation we heard just now with Lindsay, I mean, that was the reason why I'm wearing a blazer, is because if it's a lapel mic, you need to find a way to hook it to the back of your pants and hook it on the lapel. A shift dress is beautiful. It is really, really difficult to wire up if you have a lapel mic. So you want to know what the microphone options are, if it's going to be a hand microphone, a Britney mic, you know, the one that goes down your face like this, which is always, frankly, uncomfortable to wear, but one that's good to wear if there's a lot of noise in the background, or a wireless mic. And when you get ready to deliver the message, you have to practice, and you also got to get pumped. Practice your speech, just so you feel more comfortable. Deliver it. Don't deliver it in front of a mirror. That's weird. But you can deliver it in front of a loved one. You can deliver it in your head while you're taking a shower. If it's a really, really important speech, you might want to consider getting someone to videotape you, so you can look at the videotape and look back at yourself. During the first 3 to 5 years, I was co-anchoring a morning show on CNN. I watched the video after every single morning, and we did like a 2-hour live program. And I learned how to see what worked and what didn't work in terms of my articulation. I'll get into that in just a moment. In terms of my intonation, in terms of my gestures, in terms of what I was wearing, in terms of my hair and makeup, all of that. Sometimes you need to have that video to look at yourself and say, yes, this is the me that I want to be on that stage making this important speech. Now, you want to be mindful of articulation. So what do I mean by articulation? It means proper pronunciation. It also means framing and basically pronouncing your words correctly so everyone can hear with clarity your message and what you're trying to say. You also have stress and intonation, which is important to keep in mind, especially if you're reading from a speech that's on paper. There are a variety of ways that you can provide stress and emphasis in your speech. You could use volume. You could use a dramatic pause. Maybe not too often. You want to hold that one. You know, keep that in the background. There's also intonation. Be mindful of rising tones and falling tones. Falling tones, how do I say this? When I first started anchoring, I found that sometimes the valley girl in me would come out, and I would end sentences with a lot of rising tones. And I would say, just come back at the end of the hour. We might have this, and you might be really interested in it. And unfortunately, and that coupled with my perceived youth at the time, made a lot of people question my credibility as a journalist. And I learned that I had to use falling intonations to introduce more authority into my voice. And this even meant if there was a question mark in the script, find out, for example, what will happen next? I would say as, what will happen next? Because I needed to add that emphasis, anything that I could find in my arsenal just to give me more credibility, I had to use it. And that was something that worked for me, especially in my early years when I was trying to prove my authority. Resonance is how do you enrich your voice? How are you able to speak from the gut, from the diaphragm, to be able to really convey your voice? There are a number of people who just have such beautifully resonant voices that they were just born with it. And there are others who may not have that resonant voice, but through exercises, through visualizing, taking that bit of script through your diaphragm and being able to convey it to the other side of the room, you can have and build that resonance so you can enrich your voice. But all the while, you got to keep it conversational. Remember, it's a polite conversation. So to engage your audience, you're not just reading from your script, speaking down at them, speaking at them, but you just try to make that contact so it feels a bit more personal. And try to imagine that you're talking to, for example, a friend or a sister or someone else in the audience, so you can have that personal contact. And the fun part, you got to get pumped. And there's some really fun ways to get pumped and get excited and bring that energy to the stage. Look, we're speaking here at the Prestige Women to Power conference. We're here in the atrium of the Landmark. I'm looking at Dior and Bottega Veneta and Celine. We all know the power of style, right? Michelle Obama knows the power of style. So when she went on that stage at the DNC, she was wearing that navy blue, dark Monse deconstructed vest with the pants that was belted. She looked modern, she looked edgy, and also she brought the guns out. That was a sleeveless tunic because Michelle Obama's got those amazing arms. And it also conveyed a powerful message that she was ready to fight. I think everyone here knows the power of style, the semiotics of style, and how it's important to conveying your message, right? Michelle and her team, they know it, okay? So always keep in mind, wear your signature style. Make sure it blends well with the back of the stage, everything else. You don't want to look like a disembodied head. Wear your signature style because it's going to enhance your message, and it's also going to enhance your delivery as well, so you feel comfortable and you're ready to stand and deliver and to give it your all. I also recommend playing a hype song. Everyone has a hype song. I know you have a hype song. It could be Lil Jon, it could be Charlie XCX, it could be a Mozart aria, something that just gets you going. 15 years ago when I started solo anchoring for the first time, which you're just doing a tightrope dance on live TV, doing the news by yourself, I was like, am I ready for this? And this is kind of cheesy. This is 15 years ago. I'm listening to my neon green iPod mini in the makeup room, Lose Yourself by Eminem. Every night at like 6:45 p.m., going live at 7 a.m., I would just listen to that song for a good 3 weeks until I finally, it's just like, you got one shot, mom's spaghetti, I'm just like, I got this. You have to find a way to summon the strength or the self-belief, and sometimes you need it in a hype song. And so think about it, do you have a hype song? What's your walk-on song when you're gonna go on stage just to get you going? And you have to get over the fear. It's very natural to be fearful of giving a public speech. Again, going back to that picture of me when I was that 11-year-old girl, my dream back then was to be a librarian, not to be an anchor correspondent, to give live speeches to people. I had to learn how to get over the fear because I knew that I had a message, I had a way of thinking, and I wanted to share it with other people. So ways to get over the fear, you got to practice, right? The more you practice, the more you get over the fear, the more you feel comfortable. Find ways to achieve relaxation and focus. This could be abdominal breathing. This could be yoga breathing. I've used that and turned to that many times. Maybe you want to request a moment alone in a green room. Usually events provide the green room, and they give you that space to just clear your head, relax, do your yoga breathing, and get in the moment to get ready. And we have a variety of relaxation methods among us, right? I'll share two of mine. So one, just now, I was like, okay, there's no green room here. That's cool. We're in the middle of the landmark atrium. So I put on my earbuds, and I had to listen to, it's not quite my hype song, but it's recently been my focus song. I really like the soundtrack to the Challengers movie. Anyone listening to this by Trent Reznor? It is so good for focus. It's this really nice electronica. This is the Zendaya threesome tennis movie. The soundtrack is amazing, and it just gave me that little bit of focus. I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this. Sometimes it could be aromatherapy. I know this sounds kind of weird, but this was also during my Eminem Lose Yourself era when I was trying to hype myself up. I had a jar of Joe Malone grapefruit lotion on my desk that someone gave me, and I found that every time I took a little swipe and just put it on my wrist, that grapefruit scent just made me focused. And I relied on it for weeks until I was able to say, okay, I don't think I need that hit anymore. So the relaxation method of choice can be anything. It could be from a mantra, it could be from aromatherapy, etc. And you also have to believe in your message, right? If you're going to stand and deliver a speech, you have to really believe what you're talking about and say, oh, this is something that the audience is going to benefit from. And speaking of mantra, I mentioned that. There's a mantra that I always say every time I go live on air. It could be a report, it could be 3 hours breaking news, live TV, it could be even this speech. I always tell myself, I am here to serve. Because it's about sharing something that you learned with other people. It also, quite handily, takes the attention away from yourself. So it's not about you. It's about how do we make sure what you've learned, what you've cobbled together and collated will be able to, in a compelling way, be disseminated to the audience. And I think it's a really good mantra to say, I am here to serve. How can I help today? So we have reached the final slide. Reaching the final slide, I want to leave everyone with a homework assignment. Because you're probably like me, a class upholder personality who likes to get a homework assignment, and you do the homework assignment, and you turn it in on time. That's me. Your homework assignment is to say yes. Next time someone asks you, hey, can you give a toast at the birthday dinner of a loved one? Don't say, oh, no, no, no. Say yes. If a colleague says, hey, can you please give a few words, a farewell speech, a cherished colleague is leaving, this is her last day today. Say yes. And if Oceana, like what she did with me, DMs you and says, I want you to come to this stage in the middle of the landmark atrium and give a 30-minute speech, I want you to say yes. Yeah, there we go. Because now you know the tips on how you craft your message, on how you deliver your message, and how critically you can get over the fear. Because I want to hear all the stories that you have in this incredible audience to bring it up here, and you already have the skills to be able to harness your confidence and your intrinsic strength to make that speech with impact. Thank you so much.